So good afternoon, everyone. My name is 𝐒𝐮𝐩𝐩𝐥𝐲 𝐕𝐞𝐫𝐬𝐮𝐬, and I'm going to be the moderator for today's panel. Again, the supply versus demand dilemma, which, in my opinion, captures one of the most important balancing acts in today's energy transition. That is because on one side, global and European demand are shifting, given that we have efforts in digitalization and electrification of transport and heating. We have the reindustrialization topic picking up speed. And these are reshaping how much energy we need and when we need it today. On the other hand, supply faces constraints. Infrastructure that is not yet ready for rapid change, generation projects that are maybe facing delays, and naturally geopolitical uncertainty, which has been affecting us for quite a few years already. I'll try to keep my introduction as brief as possible. I'd like to introduce our panelists in this context. Namely, we're going to have today with us Dr. David Narmania, who's the chairman of the Georgian National Energy and Water Supply Regulatory Commission. We're also going to be joined by 𝐶𝐬𝐿 Dayaratne, who's the director of the Center for Data Analysis and chief statistician at the Heritage Foundation. And finally, Frank 𝐒𝐻𝐡𝐞, who's the vice president of the Romanian Energy Center. Having this in mind, today's perspectives will be, on one hand, academic, regulatory, and finally, we're going to have a business standpoint, trying to uncover the main topics in this dilemma that we're having between supply and demand. Having this in mind, we will start with a couple of presentations. We're going to begin with 𝐶𝐬𝐿's, who has prepared several slides for us. And will bring certainly very interesting academic perspective to our discussion. Kevin, feel free to grab the mic, and I think the slides should start quite soon.
Okay. Thank you. My name is 𝐶𝐬𝐿 Dayaratne. I'm the director of the Center for Data Analysis and chief statistician at the Heritage Foundation in Washington, D.C., over in the States. I am going to talk about the supply and demand dilemma in terms of energy policy. Next slide. So firstly, energy in and of itself is a fundamental building block of civilization. From enabling us to turn on a light switch, from enabling us to drive our cars, from enabling this very conference to operate, energy is literally the basis of anything and everything we do. And unfortunately, many people take it for granted. Next slide. So what I'm going to present is snippets of my work with three of my colleagues, Diana Furchtgott-Roth, Miles Pollard, and Richard Stern, in a paper that's available on the Heritage Foundation website titled Powering Human Advancement: Why the World Needs Affordable and Reliable Energy. So this first chart is a depiction of global energy consumption over time. The first chart on the left is in the aggregate, and the second chart is on a per capita basis. And you can see on the x-axis ranging from 1900 to 2018, you could see the dramatic increase over the course of the Industrial Revolution and the subsequent decades. Next slide. Okay. Yes. So now this is the following chart. What has risen along with the consumption of energy? Well, one thing is GDP, global domestic product. Gross domestic product. So per capita GDP has increased steadily over the 1900s, well into the 21st century. And the reason is simple. Access to affordable and reliable energy enables people to do more. It enables them to produce more output. As a result, that is manifested in higher income, so everyone is better off. So it is no surprise that with the rise in consumption of energy, so has GDP. Life expectancy. So let's look at this. So in the early 1900s globally, the first chart is in the global sense, the second chart is in the United States. Globally, you could see life expectancy was a mere 32 years of age in the early 1900s, and it has risen to over 70 years of age. You see a similar story in terms of growth in the United States, and again, the reason is simple. Access to affordable and reliable energy enables doctors to do their jobs. It gives them the life-saving tools to be able to extend lives. It empowers them with the pharmaceuticals that are developed in another industry to be able to do what they need to do. Next slide. Not surprisingly, child mortality has plummeted, both globally and domestically, for the same reason. Doctors are equipped with the life-saving tools they need, which depend on access to affordable and reliable energy. Next slide. Agricultural productivity. So this has increased significantly over the years, and the real question is, how much can we get from farmland? The first set of charts is corn yield, the second set of charts is wheat yield, and you could see the dramatic rise, and the reason is simple. Now machines do much of the heavy lifting that human beings used to do, and we can get more out in terms of the same amount of capital and labor. So agricultural productivity has substantially increased. So there is significant heterogeneity throughout the world. What I have presented are merely time series, longitudinal plots over time, where each dot was either the entire world or the entire United States. What about over the entire world, say in one of the recent years? What do things look like? Well, next slide. So here is a chart of per capita energy consumption in kilowatt hours per capita, and the y-axis is GDP, per capita gross domestic product. And you could see here the relationship. Lower energy consuming countries, I should say, such as those in Africa, have much lower GDPs simply because they can't produce the kind of output that more developed economies can. And what you see on the right is more Western countries, such as the United States and other Western European countries. Romania is around 20,000 kilowatt hours per capita, so that is slightly to the right of center. Next slide. Yes, agricultural productivity. So here, agricultural productivity, in terms of, again, how much output can we get from farmland? Well, there is significant heterogeneity throughout the world in this regard. You could see toward the left of the curve, again, you see less developed nations that consume less energy on a per capita basis, and they have lower agricultural output. Toward the right, you could see more developed nations, because they have more energy to consume, they consume more on a per capita basis, and they can actually power the machines, and they could produce more for the same amount of capital and labor. Next slide. Now, this is one of the most interesting ones. We have 4 plots here. The upper left-hand corner is the number of doctors per 1,000 people. The upper right-hand corner is life expectancy. The lower left-hand corner is child mortality rates, and the lower right-hand corner is maternal mortality rates. And you could see the relationship. Countries that consume more energy are able to have more doctors on a per capita basis because you could train them, you can equip them with the tools they need. As a result, like I was alluding to earlier, with these tools, they can extend lives. And countries that consume more energy on a per capita basis do much better in terms of life expectancy. Child mortality, maternal mortality also plummets in these countries, and the reason is simple. Doctors need power, they need energy to be able to do what they do. Next slide. Now, this, to me, is the most interesting. Everybody wants clean air, everybody wants clean water, and everybody wants a healthy environment. Well, access to affordable and reliable energy is the key to get there. If you look at this, countries that consume more energy do better on both of these metrics. The first chart is deaths due to dirty air. The second chart is deaths due to dirty water. And the reason is simple. Countries that consume more energy have cleaner stoves. There's less indoor air pollution. They're able to clean their air because doing so requires energy. Same with water. You need to be able to purify and sanitize water. And countries that consume more energy obviously do a better job at doing that. Next slide. So what does this tell us? Access to affordable and reliable energy is paramount to a flourishing society. Next slide. So this is a question we have grappled with in the States. From the American perspective, what can we do to do better? Well, the answer lies in regulatory policy. So carbon-based regulation actively discourages certain forms of energy. And let's get to that in the next slide. So the Institute for Energy Research, another think tank in the United States, issues every couple of years its North American energy inventory. And through its analysis, so it looks at Canada, Mexico, and the United States. In the United States, we have over 1.6 trillion barrels of oil and over 4 quadrillion cubic feet of natural gas that is recoverable. So next slide. The question is, economically, what would happen if we were to actually utilize these resources? Next slide. Well, at the Heritage Foundation Center for Data Analysis, we have the Heritage Energy Model, which is a clone of our Department of Energy's National Energy Modeling System. This is a national model that enables one to forecast the economic impact of various energy policies. So what we did was we juxtaposed their high oil and gas case, a scenario with 50% more oil and gas in the economy, versus their business as usual case. And we looked at economically the differences. So previous slide. So through 2050, we see a $300,000 increase in income for a family of 4. We see peak annual employment gains of over 6 million jobs and over $25 trillion in increased GDP. And the reason is simple. Access to affordable and reliable energy allows for cheaper electricity, cheaper energy. As a result, the cost of hiring go down. Everybody prospers. They take home more income. And the economy as a whole is much better off. Next slide. So what are the implications of a similar policy here in Romania? Well, obviously, access to more energy offers similar opportunities for economic growth. Now, one of the reasons for carbon-based regulation, actually the primary reason, is curbing climate change. So we looked at this question in the simulations I just showed you using the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change's climate simulator model. And specifically what we looked at is how would temperatures change, particularly warm, under this simulation we just described. And what we found was that, yes, even under worst-case scenarios of climate warming, I'm happy to discuss more details in the Q&A, under worst-case scenarios of climate warming, temperatures would increase in 2100, but by only a measly, minuscule amount, less than 0.03 degrees Celsius temperature increase by the end of the century. Next slide. So what does this tell us? Affordable and reliable energy are inextricably linked to human flourishing. We urge lawmakers across the world to avoid carbon-based regulation. You could find the Heritage Foundation Climate Calculator online, where we have simulated a variety of climate scenarios. One scenario is in the European Union. If the European Union were to completely abate CO2 emissions, that is the reason to abate CO2 emissions is to curb climate change. We have quantified the temperature impact. And even under worst-case scenarios of warming by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, there would be less than 0.13 degrees Celsius temperature mitigation by 2100. Now, this doesn't mean let oil and gas dominate the market. The point is all forms of energy, nuclear, hydropower, even renewables, should be able to compete on a level playing field without government subsidies or government interference. There'll be opportunities with the Trump administration. President Trump has only been in office for several months, but he understands this. And what he has sought to do is extract the resources here in the States, and there will be opportunities to export these resources abroad. And we urge you all, obviously, to avoid dependence on rogue nations, because if there's a geopolitical conflict, then there can be issues. Okay, next slide. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
If there are no questions from the auditorium, I actually have one for you, if I can. Namely, well, well, thank you for your presentation. Very eloquent. Thank you for that. Indeed, affordable energy is a key pathway towards prosperity, individual and societal prosperity. That's a given. In the EU, on the other hand, we think of it 3 ways at the same time. So there's energy affordability. There's also the sustainability element, to which you alluded to a certain extent, and then there's also the security aspect of it. In your opinion, if you were to give an advice to EU policymakers, how should they go about reconciling the three objectives, that is obtaining affordability, supporting sustainability, and enhancing security at the same time? How should they do it?
Absolutely. So great question. The answer is to free up the markets, repeal unnecessary regulations and subsidies, and let all forms of energy compete on a level playing field. That market itself will be a driver for economic growth, and that will answer many of the questions that are at hand.
Okay, then I'd like to thank you very much. I'd like to give the floor to David for the next presentation. So feel free to either go here or there, whichever way you prefer.
Thank you very much. I'm representing Georgian Energy and Water Supply Regulatory Commission, chairman of this commission, as well as I'm professor of Tbilisi State University. Dear colleagues, friends, this is my great pleasure. Welcome all of you, and have a special privilege very shortly present for you the regulatory activities of our commission, as well as how we are balancing the most important issues, the golden middle between customers and suppliers. The first slide, please. In this slide, traditionally we have trilemma: security, access, and sustainability of the energy. For us as a regulator, this trilemma is most important, because the energy security, which first of all means the diversification of energy sources, is very important. Our government have very clear vision how diversified the different energy sources, and have a special supporting mechanisms. Deputy Minister underlined about of these issues, but we as a regulator are setting tariffs, are in our perspective supporting the diversification, as well as our direct responsibility is to put the investments and develop the substations, to develop the network, and this is very, very important for accessibility of electricity, as well as affordability of electricity and natural gas for all of citizens. When we as a regulator are setting end users tariffs, we are including in these tariffs capex and opex, and after that we are giving some recommendations to our government to give the vulnerable people which are under of the poverty line some subsidies to pay the electricity or natural gas fees. And sustainability, this is very important. We are focusing on decarbonization. Country have a special strategy, and are supporting to increase renewable energies in our country. Next slide, please. In our country, there is a very important hydro resources. As Deputy Minister mentioned, more than 80% of our generation is based on the hydro resources. We have also some thermal power plants. Two thermal power plants is owned by government, and two is private thermal power plants. And when the consumption is increasing and the hydro generation is less than we are using, we are importing natural gas from Azerbaijan and producing electricity in our thermal power plants. So in few months, like April, May, June, some part of July, we have net producing and are exporting our net electricity in neighbor countries like Turkey, Armenia, and some months we are importing from a neighbor country as well. Uh, More than 10 years, we are reforming our energy sector, which comes from the EU integration process. We, as a part of neighborhood policy, we, as a part of the EU integration agenda, have several reforms in Georgia, and as a regulator, are adopting secondary acts. Last 6 years, more than 50 different regulatory acts was adopted by regulator. Some of them is the direct transposition of the European regulations. We are also developing our electricity market and are increasing competition in this market, are opening step by step our electricity market, which means that the regulation is not only in one side, the another customer's side as well. And we, as a regulator, are responsible on the customer's protection, and more than 1,000 disputes, which is between customers and suppliers, are every year annually to solve in our commission. So in next slide, I have some steps of the Georgian electricity market reforms, the main milestones. We really started this process in 2019 because end of this year was adopted by Georgian Parliament new law of electricity and water supply. According of that, our government, state electric system and commercial operator founded Georgian Electricity Exchange. It was established in 2020. After that, we as a regulator adopted several regulatory acts, and from 1st of July 2024, the transitional market model was launched. So in the next slide also, I have the Georgian cross-border interconnection. As you know, our country have a strategic importance in our region. Georgia is small but very interesting country because we are a gateway between Europe and Asia. And have an interconnection in all of our neighbor countries, have parallel synchronous system with Russia and Azerbaijan, parallel synchronous system with Turkey, and isolated island system with Armenia, Turkey, and now Russia as well. And we are exporting and importing electricity, as well as we are transit country from one neighbor to the another neighbor, and our state electric system, which is a state-owned company, is operating all of this process. So we are, next slide please, regional connector according of our strategic location, and we are developing our existing infrastructure for cross-border transmission development. We are investing, our state electric system is investing on the development of substations as well as transmission lines. And we, as a regulator, when are calculating the transmission tariffs, we are including these state investments on the transmission tariffs. And regional integration initiatives, which was underlined by Deputy Minister, the Black Sea submarine cable project is most important for our country. Georgia will play the important role because on one hand we are developing the alternative energy sources, renewable energies, green energies, and it will be a period that we have export potential using to the Black Sea submarine cable to the Europe. And today we and our local partners, local regulator, will sign memorandum of understanding. Next slide, please. Develop the common regulatory acts, and will be in coordination with the different European partners to establish regulatory basis, to use common practice and develop these very important projects. Thank you very much.
Thank you kindly for your presentations. Happy to take questions from the audience, should there be any. Yes.
One of the milestones that I remember seeing in Georgia as an innovative financing solution for the immense hydropower potential of your nation, it was the creation of a Georgian sovereign fund. And I remember that it was one of the quickest fundraisers and incorporations of a sovereign fund. It was some 10, 20, 12 years, 15 years ago. I remember talking to the former Prime Minister of Georgia.
You are absolutely right.
Who became a consultant after that, because, you know, nobody's perfect. You have to live after politics. But my question is, how did you basically manage to create that fund, and how the investments in hydro were articulated in a way? I believe it's an interesting, and it's relevant also to Romania, because we are now playing with the Development Bank, EIB, EIF, but I do believe that attracting capital, private capital markets, investments, and not only institutional money is something important. That's one. The second one is for the huge hyperscalers and data centers in America financing, because there is the gap, as I know, is something like 110 gigawatts, so that's huge. And my question is, how is the current administration's more nuanced position on renewables, with nuclear, with geothermal, with batteries, with natural gas, and everything in between? Do you think there will be any, I don't say big policy change, but some form of realignment of the instruments to create enough electricity, energy supply for the huge boom, including also America's industrial renaissance that President Trump is pushing so hard in having so much investment? So the question is, how will America, your grid, the role of the states, how would you cope with such a huge surge in demand? Speaking of your presentation. Sorry.
Absolutely. So it's a great question. So the answer is that President Trump has issued, I think it was on his very first day of office, actually, an energy dominance executive order, where he sought to, basically repeal unnecessary restrictions to allow for the dominance of certain forms of energy that were actively discouraged during the Biden administration. But more broadly speaking, to answer your question is, this really underscores the need for energy abundance of all forms, not just oil and gas, but nuclear technology as well. For example, Microsoft, I believe, is resurrecting 3 Mile Island, and nuclear technology is going to be paramount in being able to meet the demands on the upcoming increased demands on the grid due to the proliferation of artificial intelligence. And this really underscores the need for energy abundance, not scarcity. And scarcity happens when there are unnecessary regulations in the picture.
You are absolutely right. Approximately 12 years ago was the established special fund, partnership fund, which is owned 100% by Georgian government, which was coordinator from governmental side to prepare some feasibility studies, prepare some technical documentations, invite investors, or negotiate with the international financial institutions as a representative of Georgian government. Under of this partnership fund was construct 2 state-owned thermal power plants in Georgia. Gardabani district, Gardabani 1, which installed capacity in 180 megawatt hour, and the second one is Gardabani second, 240 megawatt hour. After that, government also funded under of the Ministry of Economy and Sustainable Development a Georgian Energy Development Fund, which is also preparing the feasibilities, projects, have a negotiation with investors, etc. Have a 5-10% share in these projects, and after construction and finalizing of the projects, have a existing exit mechanisms. But most important, the last 3 years is the special supporting mechanism adopted by a Georgian government. This is a 𝐶FT, contract for difference mechanisms. This is also the financial supportive mechanism for investors. When the market price will be, when the selling price will be less than the average market price, government is covering this money to the private investors, which means that they have guaranteed money, and the financial institutions which are financing these projects, this is also very important guarantee, because they know that, for example, for the solar energy per kilowatt hour will be 5.6 cent, and these mechanisms is very important mechanisms. 2 special auctions was announced, and signed different memorandums of understanding by Georgian government, which is based on this mechanism. And currently, some of projects are the construction stage, some of them are the detailed project design stage, etc. And soon will be the real results of the supportive mechanisms.
Thank you for your answers. I'd like to get to Frank now for a more national perspective. Let's focus a bit on Romania now, if that's possible, especially given your insight into the Romanian market and the Romanian energy system overall. We have talked a lot about supply, demand, so production and end consumers. However, there's an intermediary, if I can put it like that, that needs not to be omitted, namely grids. Given that Romania has been pushing for new generation capacities, especially intermittent ones, given that we are interested in new technologies, whether it's storage, whether it's aggregating maybe prosumers and so on. Do you feel our national grid is up to the task? And to complement this question, do you believe Romania has the proper regulatory and legislative framework to boost investment in this critical piece of infrastructure?
Well, very good question. So, first of all, my name is Frank 𝐒𝐻𝐻. I'm since more than 20 years in Romania. From 2005 to 2019, I was the CEO of one of the major distribution company and sales for gas and electricity. And now I'm the vice president of CRE, the Romanian Energy Center, who is also representing the Romanian energy sector on European level at Eurelectric. And we're very proud of this role. Now, to come to your questions, well, the easy answer would be no, but let's dig a little bit into it, because what we see is that we have increasing need for grids which are very, very resistant in terms of new installations, in terms of cybersecurity also. And the production landscape is changing a lot. It changed already a lot in comparison to, we all know the old traditional model where we have production and then we have the transport grid and the distribution grid and at the end the customer. Well, that picture has changed completely. If you look at the new generation capacities, of course, we're also investing in new hydro plants, etc., but we've got lots of renewables which are decentrally. installed. We are talking about, we are together with the USA and Canada, we are, I think, amongst the most important countries for small nuclear reactors. Still at the pilot phase, but we are really pushing ahead for it, which all means that we will have more decentralized generation capacity. And in addition, we have also the installations for small PV at households. We've got small parks for PV and wind, of course, all over the country. And this all is a huge challenge for the grid. Some month ago, we had an outage in the Iberic country region, and we saw which kind of huge impact it has on the grids. So the grids are really the absolute backbone for our electricity supply. Not to forget that we also still have, and we will have for a long time, a significant gas grid. So, and the needs for flexibility, the needs for digitization for the grids are huge. I have some figures what Eurelectric and other institutions estimate for the next years. Sorry, I have to look at my slides because I never can remember these figures. Eurelectric has a Grids for Speed study, which says that until 2030, the EU has the need for 67 billion euros per year need for investment in the electricity grid. This is a huge number. The European Commission's grid package sets the number for 2040 to 730 billion euro for distribution and 477 billion for transport. These are immense figures. And the Eurelectric study, and also we have studies from Valorem, etc., they estimate that the needs in Romania actually for around about 1.2 to 1.3 billion euros of investments per year. Now, if you look at the regulatory framework, it will not allow for more than 400 million. This is a huge discrepancy and will put at risk the development needs for Romania, the development needs we have for our industry, we have for our household customers, because electricity demand, we expect to rise it over the next years. Figures say that until 2030, we should have an increase of around about 2.5%, later even increasing to 4.5% per year. So this means really we need a strong grid, we need a reliable grid, we need a flexible grid, a lot more flexible than we had so far. And this requires huge investments. So unfortunately, in the current situation, the regulatory framework is not sufficient to cater for the significant and needed investment in the grid. And I understand the pressure which we have on inflation in Romania, and of course every increase in electricity distribution tariffs or transport tariffs have an impact on inflation, but actually the impact is not very huge. And also it has lots of side effects. If you're talking about 1 million euro of investments into the electricity grid, it usually has, well, a factor of up to 10 of additional investments which are attracted. Meaning we need, for example, additional road infrastructure which needs to be built. I think we all know that also the road infrastructure in Romania would need some significant improvements. So even if the factor is not 1 to 10, but there's a huge follow-on effect for other industries and attracting additional investments for Romania. So it is really, we have to find the right balance. I fully agree. So we cannot look for increases which would put our inflation targets further at risk. But on the other hand, for the future development, also for the role of Romania in the region and in the EU, it is desperately needed that we have a significant increase here. We're talking about WACC mainly for distribution, which needs to be designed in such a way that further additional investments are possible. And the demands are rising. Now, we all know in which political environment we're currently living in. I mean, now globally or at least regionally, with the unfortunate aggressive war in Ukraine, where we have also additional, let's say, attacks against the European Union, and cyber attacks is a big topic. Which means, and the risk, because we need highly digitized grids also in the future, the risk for cyber attacks is rising, which also means we definitely have to increase our investments into cybersecurity. It's an absolute must in order to assure that the electricity, which is really the nature of our life, the backbone of our life in every country, can be supplied in a safe and secure way.
Thank you for your insight. I know there isn't that much time left. However, I will still try to ask one more question to each of you. I will use the opportunity of the fairly recent State of the Union that Ms. von der Leyen delivered, well, I think a couple of weeks ago or even less, where she mentioned that energy affordability needs to be tackled. And you, Frank, just mentioned that should we take, let's say, the tariff approach to boosting investment in grids, that can potentially affect, well, the value of the bills ultimately. So energy affordability, as we all know, here in the EU is a major concern to a similar extent, maybe even more here in Romania. And at the State of the Union, there were two potential solutions that were mentioned with regard to solving energy affordability, or at least mitigating it. Namely, boost renewables via CFDs and employing PPAs more often. In your opinion, Frank, do you believe that these solutions suffice to bring bills to a lower value? And to what other solutions from a regulatory standpoint do you believe would be optimal to help bring final prices down from your American perspective and the Georgian perspective respectively?
So the role of CFDs is, from my point of view, not to reduce the bills, but to make the environment for investors stable and reliable, so that it
reduces volatility. So
it reduces volatility. That's absolutely clear. Yeah, but I would not see this as a main factor for reducing energy bills. And honestly, yes, we need investments in modern technologies which allow us to produce electricity at high efficiency. And what we have to cater for, and we should not underestimate this factor, is of course that we protect the vulnerable customers. And this is an absolute must, and we have done significant steps in this respect. And it is a big and huge factor in Romania, where energy poverty is an issue. And not only, I can tell you, in my home country, in Germany, it's also an issue which is growing. So these customers need to be protected, definitely. But there was also for a long period of time an overprotection. So don't misunderstand me. I need also every euro I can get, but I was also protected for a long time by the Romanian regulation and political environment, and received prices which were subsidized. And I did not. I'm in a fortunate position that I did not need that. So it needs to be clearly addressed, or clearly the vulnerable customers needs to be addressed in a good and fair way, so that we can address this issue. And further investments will only improve energy prices in the long run. New generation capacities, modern generation capacities, distributed generation capacities, they will have a positive impact on the overall pricing of energy.
Yes, as I was alluding to in my talk, my perspective would be to free up the energy markets and repeal unnecessary, I'm not saying repeal all regulations, repeal unnecessary regulations that are overly burdensome and limit consumer choice. For example, like I was alluding to, carbon-based regulation will not meaningfully impact climate change. That is without a doubt. Now, if we want to have a conversation about climate change, that would be a separate topic to have. But these regulatory policies, like I said, if the EU were to completely abate CO2 emissions to 100% starting today, there would be less than 0.13 degrees Celsius temperature mitigation by the end of the century. In the simulations I was describing, with more oil and gas in the American economy, that actually shows markedly lower electricity and energy prices. So allowing for a free market where there is a greater supply that is not hampered by unnecessary regulations, as well as the removal of unnecessary subsidies to free up the markets, will not only reduce electricity prices and reduce energy prices, but also provide more options for everybody, not just oil and gas, but nuclear technologies and other things, because these things need to permeate without government intrusion, so which leads to misallocation of funds. So that, I think, is the bottom line.
So in our energy basket, we have many different types of electricity. Some of them is more cheap than the another ones. The state-owned biggest hydropower plant, 𝐒𝐮𝐩𝐯 hydropower plant, have a cheap energy because we as a regulator are setting tariff of this hydropower plant, and when we are setting tariffs for households, we are using more cheap energy than when we are setting tariffs of the commercial sector. This is one mechanism for affordability of energy, and the second is the governmental subsidies, not subsidies, the households which are under of the annual poverty line in capital city Tbilisi, the city budget, and the regions, the state budget is financing some part of the electricity fees. It's approximately annually 10 million euros equivalent.
I believe we have now come to an end. Unless there are any questions from the audience, I'd like to conclude our meeting and thank our panelists for their valuable contributions. I believe we've had quite a fruitful exchange of ideas. So thank you again. And I believe it's high time for lunch. Thank you very much.